Welcome to the Nordic Mythology podcast. I'm Daniel Farrand, Conan of the Company Horns of Odin, and I'm joined as always by Dr. Mathias Nordvig.
Hello, everybody. We're joined this time by Dr. Rune Rasmussen from Nordic Animism, whom I hope many of our listeners are very well familiar with at this point. And also a new guest. We have Dr. Tyson Yunkaporta joining us from all the way from Australia, which is why we're recording at this curious hour. And Tyson is an author.
Let's make it easy. I'm just a photo negative of Rune.
It's a photo negative of Rune.
I'm like a Coriolis effect, like spun out some digital twin souls, and that's me there.
Yeah, it's kind of a yin yang thing going on.
I like it.
North hemisphere, southern hemisphere.
Also,
you have a job. That's also negative.
Mirror negative of you. Yeah, so you're a professor at the Deakin University in Melbourne, Tyson, and also an author of the book How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World, which I find very interesting. And right now you're frozen, and I hope you come back really soon to tell us more about yourself.
I thought he was just sitting still, but I'm guessing he's frozen.
He is.
He seems like the kind of person who would sit still just to fuck with us.
Just to fuck with us.
Well, let's go with Rune. Rune, why don't you? Obviously, you've been on here a few times. People have seen you. We've done episodes on a bunch of different things, but every podcast is somebody's first podcast. So let people know who you are and kind of what you do, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm Rune Rasmussen, and yeah, I'm the negative image of Tyson. I'm a scholar of religion, and I'm trying to apply new animist theory and kind of indigenous thinking on our own culture as your descendants in order to try to recover traditional elements of our knowledge and bring that back into contemporary cultural negotiation. And that's partly why I found Tyson, because I read his book and found it really amazing, and I have been sort of recommending it in 3 out of 4 videos or something like that since I read it. So yeah, but now I see Tyson is back online here. So
yeah,
Tyson, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm from I don't know, like, if a lot of people say, like, if they don't know Australia, that it looks like a dog's head to them, and I'd be like on the right ear, or the left ear if you're the dog, the right ear if you're the guy that's looking at the dog. Okay. You know, and most people look at us like we're dogs down here anyway. So there you go. But that's only because we have a separate. That's all right. We're working on it. We're working on it. They you know, they're a bit troubling, but they haven't been here long. They've just been here like centuries, and you know, we'll sort them out. Now they'll be fine. Yeah. So a lot of people kind of look down at us, like, literally, even though we're in the top hemisphere. We're in the southern hemisphere, which is actually on top of the world.
Yeah, that's right.
All down here. That's the bottom part. So
I can already tell I'm going to enjoy this.
Come up to the south. Come up to the south sometime. Up here, it's good. All your original maps had south is up and north is down. So you should check that out. Yeah, just really loving it. Yeah, just Indigene from the southern hemisphere is probably all that will make sense to you from where you are there. But,
there you go.
But I'm from Upledge clan. My totem is. Bro, I don't even know what a Brolga is. Look, let's just leave it at that. I wrote a book once, and you know, some white people liked it, so it's doing well.
There you go.
So,
That's all we need.
but that's not what we're here for. We're here because me and Rune are brothers, and he asked me to come. So we're going to deal with some of these fascists who are trying to steal your culture. Because if there's anything I really know about, I know about that. How to deal with fascists who are trying to mess with your culture. So,
there we go.
Yeah, let's get stuck in.
Let's do it. So, all right, before we get to that, Rune, do you want to start with, because we're going to talk about that, the Aun calendar? Is that the Aun festivities?
Well, it's the Aun Year, actually.
Aun Year.
Which is next year, 2023.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm gonna try to kind of sum it up very quickly. In the olden days, before Christianity arrived and messed up everything in Northern Europe, there were these huge festivals where everybody gathered in regions, and they did this with an interval of 8 years. 8 years in between. So in the 9th year, that's when they did it. So 2 centers where this was done was in Leira in Zealand and in Uppsala in Sweden. And well, I was, as part of my work with calendar, I've been working on calendar, I was wondering about this. How can we try to make this dating again today? And then I thought through a lot of stuff, figured out a very good bid for how this was done. And then Mathias and I, and also some other people, we gathered a kind of a group of people who have a little bit of a voice when it comes to talking about North European heritage, and basically said, okay, this is probably the best best shot at an analysis on the market today, if you can say it like that. So now we say it. It's 2023 will be the Aun year. That is the year to make these octennial celebrations. So that is the coming year, 2023. So we are sort of making people aware of it here throughout 2022, and also starting dialogues about what does it mean, and what does the story about it mean, and what to do then. Because when you read the ancient chronicles, they hung a lot of thralls in the groves and stuff, and we don't do that today. But what are the basic meanings under these kind of celebrations that we can engage again today from our contemporary perspective, and then make meaning with it today. So that's the Aun year. Now, the important thing was then that I had a chat with Tyson on for my channel, for the Nordic Animism channel, and we were chatting about this thing with the Aun year, and how can we work this thing into being again? Because I've been inspired by Tyson's perspective and so on. And as a part of that chat, we were sort of talking about Qanon and all these things. And then retrospectively, I realized later that there was a very interesting connection between these two things. But let me just return to that in a little bit. The important little story to have with the Aun year is that there is a myth about how this span of 8 years emerged. And that myth says that there was a king of Sweden who sacrificed a son to Odin every 9 years or every 8 years. He sacrificed a son in order to live forever. So he killed his own children in order to prolong his own life, and that
happened. Selfish bastard.
Exactly. And that happened.
Bastard.
That happened. He did that every.
It's always Sweden. Years. Always Sweden.
Yes.
It seems to be. It seems to be them.
And I had been sort of wondering about this strange story, and like, what the flip does it mean? And I had kind of started to catch on a little bit to the thing that this story must be somehow a negative mirroring of this, in fact, really beautiful cosmic cyclicity, when the alignment of the sun and the moon goes in a certain way, then these 8 years has passed, and people are supposed to celebrate. And then when I spoke to Tyson about it, he just immediately caught on to the fact that this is, of course, a cautionary tale. And then I have also been thinking further about it. So that's basically the Aun Year. Is there anything that any of you want to say about that?
Yeah, so this is something I think that touches onto this. Of course, the Cronus myth in Greek mythology, right? Where we essentially, like, Cronus is the personification of time, who's eating his children, right? Until, well, Zeus cuts off his balls. Like, that's literally what happens. So I think that's kind of interesting. Obviously the Greek myth, I would say, in many ways also links up with time, right? And the planning of time, and the beginning of calendar, and you know, if we think about it in terms of planets as well, how many planets were visible to the naked eye back then? I believe it was 8, right? So there's something interesting going on here. There's like a bunch of like connections that are happening. So I think that's really fascinating to see.
My lore might be a bit rusty. It's been a while since I read the Eddas, but wasn't there something about Ragnarok begins when Sweden joins NATO?
I think so. Yeah.
It feels like that at the minute. So do we know why it's every 8 years, or the significance for 8, or the reason behind it?
Well, there are the number, both the number 8, but particularly the number 9 is.
I was going to say 9
numbers.
seems to be one that pops up all the time. It's,
yeah.
Or we seem to see in kind of like Nordic mythology.
But the thing is that when you look at in the texts, it says every 9 years, or in the 9th year. That's what it says. But in our way of counting, that actually means what we would call every 8th year.
Yeah.
So I say every 8th year because we have an accounting that has a 0 in it, but they didn't have that in the Middle Ages. So it's
it's 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
We hadn't realized that there could be a number 0 yet.
Yeah. Which is also a pretty.
So hang on, it was
thing.
The king only ate one of the kids like every 8 years. He didn't do it every year for 8 years. He did it once every 8 years.
Yeah.
Well, that makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Makes it a little bit better.
And not as bad, yeah.
And he did, and he did that then for 9 years, and then the Swedes said, no, now it's enough, and then he died. Then he died.
But this myth ties into a kind of complicated calendar system that presumably existed in pre-Christian Scandinavia. Which some scholars, I assume, actually believe is based on the Metonic cycle, right? Which has this reoccurring realignment of the lunar cycle with the solar cycle, right? So that also means that every 3rd year, I think it is, then we get an additional calendar month. And then we have to like reset the clock, so to speak. So this is this is essentially myths that have to do with time reckoning, and you know, ultimately, of course, you know, the pursuit of agriculture in a very inhospitable part of the planet, where agriculture, well, you know, yeah, if you mess it up, you're gonna die. Right, so that's part of the process here that lies behind all of this as well. Correct, Rune?
Yeah, I don't think I should get myself into explaining the whole thing about the moon and the sun and stuff like that, but just that there are 8 years with
Just
which
tell them to buy your
moon.
book. Just tell them to buy your
Oh,
book.
oh, thank you. Yeah,
You can do that.
You can buy my
tell
book,
them.
and
Where can they buy it?
You can buy it on the Nordic Animism homepage and Instagram and Twitter and all that.
The book is called.
The book is called The Nordic Animist Year. I'm getting a bit of coaching and marketing here. It's awesome.
You're not a natural salesman, are you?
That's the
No, I'm
same
not.
one. I thought you had a new one.
So, but anyway, yes. Let me just say, by the way, I think the comparison with Cronus is super interesting. Cronus is eating his children in order to not be deposed, to maintain his position. And also, when you look at these very, very old legendary kings like King Aun of Sweden, and there are actually the same myth is actually connected to specific kings in Denmark, King Dan or Halfdan, and these are in a sense almost primordial beings, these kings. So I think it's a really interesting
they're
comparison.
it's just because they're called kings and stuff like that doesn't mean that they weren't mythological figures, so to speak, right?
No.
Yeah.
Perhaps even the other way around. They're called kings because they were mythological figures.
Exactly. Yeah.
So is there? Did you say is there correlation between the sun and the moon and the 8th year? Is there anything there? Like,
yeah, what basically happens is that the lunar cycle returns to the same position approximately at a rhythm of 8 years. So this means if there is a new moon that falls close to the winter solstice, so there's a full darkness of both the sun and the moon, and then the sun and the moon follow each other in the beginning of the year, then that same alignment will approximately happen again 8 years later. And then it will happen with a very big precision also at a 19-year cycle. That's what Mathias mentioned, the Metonic cycle, but that's a little bit of a different thing. The important thing here is that there is an 8-year cycle with which the moon returns to the alignment of the sun.
Okay. So, Tyson, is there a version? Did you say there was a version of this from your neck of the woods, or is that all right?
Not really, and it's a bit out of my pay grade to go declaring such a thing. But that's something that would have to happen at a very high level. I have connected Rune with some more senior sort of knowledge keeper, a lady down here, and they've been doing business about fairies and volcanoes and stuff for a while. I have no idea what, because those conversations are out of my pay grade.
Wait. Are you saying that they are talking about
look at you
and volcanoes?
As soon as volcano is mentioned, I saw your eyes light up, Mathias.
He can't tell you about it. He can't tell you about it. Look, that's secret business between Rune and this elder who doesn't want to be named, who asked me for an introduction to Rune, so they could do this business together. And I don't know where, because like I said, she couldn't tell me because it's out of my pay grade, but she's currently in the Northern Hemisphere doing some ceremony that I can't even imagine. So, that would be up to people who are way out of my pay grade to decide what the corresponding thing is down here. But there are heaps of them. There's stuff around the Pleiades, with songs that, as a young, stupid person, I might be tempted to go, you know what I mean? With that, and like, I see a numerical correlation between this one and that one that seems clear to me, but I can't do that. That's not our method of inquiry.
Right.
That would have to be, really have to come in a very strong message. And that would have to be backed up in about, like, not just triangulated, but polyangulated in about 80 different ways. And then old people would have to sit with that. And then that would have to be dreams from that message for land and from the ancestors to let everybody know that that was right. And then somebody would contact Rune. And maybe they already have, and he can't say anything about it.
There's a lot of
yeah. She's really strict. She's really strict, that old girl, and she's a bit mean actually sometimes. Not that I'm complaining, but she just sort of, every now and then she just contacts me and goes, yes, I need this. I need to talk to you. I need this. Yes, that's too, whatever, done. Then I do it. She's like, yeah, thanks, goodbye. And then she's gone. Anyway, that's her. That's my.
It's very abrupt. Okay,
but that's where I am. It's like the devil wears Prada, but I'm in a really abusive internship.
I feel I know that those kinds of knowledge keepers a little bit. Got some around here too.
Maybe. Rune, so is there anything else before we move on to what I'm really excited for is the conspiracy side of things? Is there anything else you feel we need to know about, like the year of Aun?
Let me just say one thing, and that is that the fundamental realization that has sort of emerged as these debates have started to move around the Aun year in 2023 is that it seems to me, and seems to be emerging, that this Aun year is a kind of healing idea, really, and perhaps in a comparable way to what you see in other big festivals that have a long span of time between them, like the Hindu Kumbh Mela or the Jewish year of Yubal, that there is a reconnecting going on in that. And particularly because the Nordic myth of the Ragnarok, that in many Nordic myths, actually, there is a rupture, there breaks on kinship that symbolize the way that we lose connection, we can lose connection with the world, right? So there's this feeling that the world is, or that our interconnectedness with the world is fragile, it can actually break. And I think that the Aun myth of this very kinship destructive behavior from this king, right, that is basically about healing that rupture, and that is the basic thing which I think can be narrated, and it can be associated with all different kinds of destructive behavior or violence, and particularly like comfort or life form that is resting on perhaps invisible violence, Aun's violence on his own kin, that we are eating our own children, we're eating the planet away from our own children.
Rune, so just like to maybe help you express what the role of the year of Aun also is essentially, you're trying to fix the world, right? Yeah.
I mean,
and that's your main
small
project. Yeah. No, I like it. I say aim big. I'm on board with that.
I have a white messiah complex, I can't help it.
It's different though, because he's not down here taking over shit in the southern hemisphere. This I likened it to like a bit of a call and response thing in ceremony. It's like this one, that's coming up, the Aun, that first iteration is a call, and it goes out there, and then there's a response, and there's agency in that from people who want to respond. Yes. And I don't know, I think there's clearly things happening before that and leading him to that, which is leading a lot of people to a lot of different places. If I have elders down here who are dreaming of volcanoes in the ice, who are dreaming of your place and want to know more about the elves, then there's shit going on. All right. Yeah. So let's just trust that. And
no, there's definitely stuff going on up here, and when attraction occurs, all kinds of shit comes in. That's a problem with radical inclusion. You get you know what I mean? Yeah, definitely.
Oh, it's
there's
actually
all stuff. All kinds of entities come sniffing around when there's when something this powerful is happening. And so I mean that's another thing to deal with.
I very much agree, and I just wanted to add something to that. Like it was a couple of months after fate for some reason had sent me all the way to Colorado from Denmark, that Rune contacted me and was like, we need to do things together. and that's that has been, developing ever since. That's what, nearly 7 years in the making now.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Mm.
All right. Can we get to fascist and conspiracy theories? Because I'm gonna sit up in
the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit up in my chair and I want to hear it all.
Now, the funny thing was that when we had this awesome yarn, me and Tyson, about this Aun Year, we were talking about, we just got into talking about QAnon and conspiracy theories, and we didn't even, it was only like a month later or something like that it suddenly struck me like, damn, the QAnon ideology, is like, it's like an Aun myth that has fallen off the tracks, It's like a wrong, what Tyson calls a wrong story, an Aun wrong story, because it is a myth about power that is predicated on violence on children. And that just made me think, damn, there's this crazy thing about working with Euro traditional knowledge, that it is at the same time, it is extremely rejected. It's extremely pushed away in some ways. Like when I'm it's very difficult for me, for instance, to find a voice in academia for it, because there basically isn't space for it. But at the same time, it's so pervasive because we, the white guys, have dominated the shit out of everything. So it's like, it's as if it's there inside the matrix of everything somehow, and then it comes up in these weirdly pathological ways, because there aren't, for instance, knowledge keepers. There aren't what Tyson describes a thorough cultural process to legitimize knowledge and figure out, okay, so this is the right wing. So then all of a sudden you get an Aun myth, or something that is really an Aun myth that comes up in the form of QAnon. And that just makes me think, if this Aun Year and these things are in fact a mythology and ceremony of healing, then perhaps it has a potential to speak to those people as well, and address, perhaps give them the right story that they are perhaps trying to find somehow.
Okay. So, right, let's pretend that you've got to explain this to a dummy, and it's not really going to be hard to pretend. So
let's pretend I'm not a dummy.
Sorry, I just went into ranting there.
Give me more credit.
I was mesmerized, man. I love it.
No, so was I. But let's start at the beginning.
Hostile now, basic.
For people like me. What the fuck is QAnon?
Stay something easy for me to listen to. All right.
for us Brits,
Hey,
I feel like QAnon's not too much of a thing over here, and I don't really understand what it is. I hear about it kind of here and there, but I'm not so au fait with what it actually is.
Oh, you got him.
Who want to explain that? But it's probably you, Tyson, or you, Mathias. Like
right.
you know,
so
quite
basically,
it's a.
There's look. I just put a link up to an article I wrote recently. So I belong to one research study and a longitudinal research group. We've been looking at this stuff, and I was in another one recently. So I spent quite a few years researching all this stuff. It's around the disinformation and the conspiracy theory stuff, but where the research is focusing now is on conspirituality. So conspirituality, it's like, all this people say conspiracy, all right, that's fine, but the key thing is spirit side of things. So people there's all kinds of disinformation in the world, but the stuff that works really well and radicalizes people really quickly is the stuff that has spirit in it, because that's good story. Now you need the supernatural in story, and that's not what the legacy media ever has, but it needs to be there somehow. Now usually it's spirit. The idea of spirit is that it forces you to be ethical. You know, that idea that you're answerable somehow to your ancestors and to your descendants. It's the thing that forces you to behave ethically, you know. So it doesn't have to come in as magic into the findings of your understandings of how you organize your society. It just has to be there as a cautionary thing that makes sure you do the right thing, that keeps your human institutes trustable. You know, that's what spirit's there for. Anyway, we've taken that out of stories in how we share with people. What's successful about conspiracy theorists, you know, conspiracy movements, just bullshit stuff like usually on the right with politics is where all this stuff comes out. But, you know, it's to make sure Hillary Clinton doesn't get voted in, for example, lock her up, not just don't vote for her, but she's a criminal who is eating Haitian kids. You know what I mean? Like, you could just fucking say it. And you can say it because there's story, because there's supernatural elements. Why is she eating Haitian kids? Oh, you know, all that voodoo magic there in Haiti, right? Yeah, all in that. Because they're devil worshippers here. And they like the blood of children. Remember that, Hunter Thompson? You know, remember that the adrenochrome? You know, you need the adrenalized blood and you drink that and it's like a drug. Yeah, they're doing that in satanic rituals. They're Luciferians and they're going to Haiti and they're eating all these kids. Anyway, it's yeah, so straight away, that's really appealing to a lot of people who have no power and, you know, who've grown up in an oral tradition. So, you know, there, you know, in the UK, you've got it too. Everywhere you've got it. We're all growing up in oral traditions where there's magic. There's magic there. And then suddenly the stories have no magic in them anymore. And then here it is. So that's what QAnon is. QAnon is, everyone will say they're not in QAnon, but it's basically, I don't know, it's a catch-all for pretty much all of the, like, you know, don't tell me you haven't got sovereign citizen movement in the UK. You have that, you know, people who believe that the law is based on admiralty law, and if there's a fringe around the flag, then court is irrelevant, and you could just say, "Ha, fringe in the flag," and it's like Harry Potter. I can get away with rape. You know, it's just freaking insane stuff, but people believe it. It's just absolute insanity. Okay. But people believe it because it's got good story, because there's spirit in it. So QAnon. The only problem is that usually it's aligned with fascism. Okay, the common element that I'm finding is all of it is aligned with fascism. All of it paid for with dark money by people through extreme right-wing think tanks funded by the Koch brothers, Peter Thiel, all these people, these real proper fascists on the right. They're funding all this disinformation that happens. And, you know, they're funding all like of these things. You know, a lot of the weirdest ones, they get completely made up by people like, who's the one with the tattoo of Nixon on his back? The one that Trump pardoned? Roger Stone. Yeah, that guy. He's, so a lot of the stories he makes up, and he's quite open about making them up too. You'll find him there on Alex Jones's show still today, just making this stuff up.
To these political actors.
But there's spirit in there. And of course, yeah, these are political actors. They're acting politically. They've got a lot of useful idiots out there who are young men. Some of them are veterans as well. But the idea is you can manipulate these useful idiots into believing these things. And you can do it especially if there's mystical connections to it, if there's mystical symbols and stories. And what fascists particularly like to do is to co-opt stuff from an imagined Viking or Hyperborean kind of past. In the north, in the snow, there was a better kind of man. There was a barbarian. There was an age undreamed of when shining kingdoms lay spread across the land, and you had a rune and you put it on your arm and it meant best, and it meant Aryan, and you put it there and everything would be great. You know, so you've got these, I don't know, there's these young men who see their power going as white people. They see it not going, they'll still get on top. It's just like not ridiculous, like not to the point where you can physically own a human being. So they say, whoa, I don't want to lose that power. Mummy, can someone help me? Is there some magic that I could do so that these people People don't take over. So great replacement theory is one of the big stories. You know, white people are getting replaced by brown people from the Southern Hemisphere, and the Jews are responsible for it. So it's a lot of this kind of stuff, and they're getting all these sacred tattoos. They're digging around in the histories and the Eddas, and they're digging around in the Beowulf myth, and they're trying to find little bits and pieces to co-opt into their big story, to legitimize spiritually or find some magic that will put them at the top of a pyramid. And as Rune knows, that's not what Nordic cosmology is about. It's not a frickin' pyramid. It's better than that. But these guys are trying to twist it. Anyway,
Tyson,
it took a lot of explaining to do. I'm sorry that took so long, but it had that long. Because as you can see, there's a lot in it.
You might be my favorite guest we've ever had on here. Like that was enjoyable to watch you just go there.
Daniel, you look a little bit like somebody who should be eating popcorn when you're sitting.
Yeah, I feel like the Michael Jackson.
You've called it.
Fuck you! You just enjoyed it. You just like watching someone just fucking lose their shit.
I've never sat so upright in my seat before.
Tyson, I wanted to ask you. So these political actors, for instance, the Koch brothers or Rupert Murdoch or whoever they are, right? They of course don't believe in these wild stories themselves, right? They simply circulate them so as to hack the political systems of, vulnerable democracies, like for instance the United States or the UK for that matter. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. They do, and they but they have higher level operatives that they support and they fund, and you can see those lines of funding too. But there's also dark money where we're not sure exactly where it's coming from, but we're figuring it out. It's difficult with crypto because someone can put 2 million into Alex Jones's account to help him avoid accountability in the courts for like having fans attack families of Sandy Hook mass shooting victims, etc. Anyway, look, this keeps going on and it keeps going on. And you got people like Tucker Carlson. He looks like he believes what he's saying. He's like, I think he's the most watched person in America in terms of media at the moment. Listening's a different thing. That's Joe Rogan would be at the top. But you get a lot of these dudes like Tucker who he talks about the great replacement theory, and then I don't know, the next day in Buffalo, word for word, there's a manifesto on a guy who shoots a dozen people, a dozen black people. And, pretty much his manifesto is word for word what Tucker said the night before. Tucker doesn't actually believe that shit.
No.
But it's great. It's really good because it stirs up all these useful idiots. It stirs up problems. It makes sure that the left is dealing with stupid shit and arguing against stupid shit instead of actually arguing about the things that we need to do to save the world, which will hamper things like profits for fossil fuel mining companies, etc. So
that has always
we especially need to make sure, okay, the price of oil's gone down, how come the price of fuel hasn't gone down, that kind of shit. Basically power needs to distract people from that. Power needs to make sure that social justice, any move towards equality needs to be undone, and that there needs to be useful idiots out there fighting it. So why not give them some fucking rune tattoos? It helps.
What you're saying there is that's exactly what I've always, as long as I've known about conspiracy theory, like really annoyed me about them, that there is so much openly known stuff that it is so important to deal with, that why the fuck would somebody start thinking that there are there are chemtrails in the sky that makes us all something, or that wearing masks is the most serious abuse to
Bill Gates is trying to microchip you.
Or Bill. I mean, why would somebody make up crazy stories when there's so many real stories that actually need to be dealt with?
Yeah.
However, then I've always had this the other side, which is like when you have the idea that it was George Bush who made the 9/11 attack happen, right? Now, the idea is obviously grotesque. You can take one look at that blank face of George Bush, and you know that he wouldn't have planned that, right? So, but then what happened after 9/11 was that the event was used to do a lot of political stuff. It was used to dismantle human rights, international rights in terms of torture and all these stuff. Now, I think from the perspective of an animist analysis, you could actually say that those politicians, George Bush and Tony Blair and whatever their name was, who did these things legitimized by 9/11, you could say that in a sense their subjectivity perhaps retrospectively almost inhabits the event. That means that from an animist perspective, you could almost say that a mythic expression of that is that George Bush made it happen. So
that's it.
The only.
And by the way, can we just acknowledge the
that.
fact that George Bush took this upon himself? Like he owned that situation when he made that Freudian slip of talking about the Ukrainian war, and it's like this unjust
Iraq.
war on
Iraq.
That this one man. It's like I don't remember exactly how he did it, but he accidentally publicly acknowledged that he led an unjust war on Iraq.
Yeah.
Did he do that? Oh yeah, of course he did. Of course he did.
That's brilliant. But here's the thing: you can't just go. For decades they are they are supporting a very strange sect of Wahhabism, and they are promoting them to power, and causing a very terrible situation in the Middle East, where there are many human rights violations, and it's shifted power and created psychotic regimes which shouldn't be there. But it makes the facilitation of extraction of oil much more easy in the Middle East. And this is what are you asleep yet? Because I am. There's no story there. It's true, and that's how. How indirectly the Bush family did 9/11. It's just being Enron and being a prick and
but
changing the world in certain ways that fuck things up. Heaps easier to just say Bush Jr. was reading that book about it upside down at devil. Because that's what the bombers were saying too. America is Satan. That's it. America is Satan, and I'm like, yeah. I'm radicalized as soon as I hear that. I'm like, yeah. You don't have to show me a YouTube video. I'm like, yeah. Although it helps when you see OBL on a horse. That fellow was handsome riding a horse. Yeah. If you ever look at them old propaganda films, he looked awesome.
All right. I'm going to try and rein this back in because I don't know where we're going with this one. As soon as someone said 9/11, I was like, oh fuck. Okay, so
maybe that's going to be
911. Warlock calling the warlock.
Yes.
How can we tie
Kevin Smith in his basement?
How can we tie QAnon and all these conspiracy theories to like Nordic mythology and what we're meant to be about on the podcast, other than these kind of mindless idiots?
Let me just give you an example. Daniel, it was hilarious as prep for this episode. You asked me, what can I read or study to feel more grounded in what we're going to be talking about?
Mathias, after 117 episodes, I feel like I can set you up for these now. Like,
yes, you can.
We can read each other's minds. I set them up, and you take it away.
Do the research.
So I told you, like, go listen to that YouTube interview there is with the so-called QAnon shaman, the face of January 6th, right? This jackass who wears, I don't know what he's wearing on his head, like coyote skin / cow horn headdress kind of thing.
That was the first time I'd ever heard of QAnon. Was this guy?
and he's got Nordic themed tattoos all over his body, and
he's got that Yggdrasil tattoo that as soon as you type Yggdrasil into Google, that's the image that comes up, the first one.
Exactly that one. And yeah, so it's a really we will have Shan put in a link for the for that interview with this guy in the show notes, because everybody needs to hear just the rambling nonsense that comes out of his head, because it's really fascinating insight into what QAnon is, conspiracy is, and it's at one point the interviewer asks him, so what is this thing about eating babies? And then our good friend goes on this rambling dark hole.
What an odd sentence! Like, just the fact that that's even a sentence.
But that's a thing in this.
That's the thing.
What about the
universe,
babies?
right?
If there are people who don't know what a QAnon is, they believe that there is a global baby cannibal incestuous sex cult whose kingpin is, and hold on to something because this is weird, Hillary Clinton. You know, so
I mean, she does look like a baby.
Senators are winning their seats on this. Senators are campaigning on this and winning their seats, and winning by a massive majority. This is not playtime anymore. This is serious.
It seems like they chose
large stretches of the population doing this.
So on the mythical side of things, I want to highlight something. Obviously, the baby eating myth, right?
So every time you say it, it makes me laugh.
I'm sorry. Yes, it's really weird.
It's like they chose the worst thing possible.
I want my baby buck. I want my baby buck.
It's like I think everybody can agree that eating babies is probably the most
boring
thing you could do.
Get into my belly. Come on,
I have
Austin Powers reference. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So
We've
I
all
mean,
seen it.
as somebody with a relatively newborn kid hanging around, I have this running joke with a friend of mine. Every time I hand him to her, she will say, "No thanks, I'm vegan." Anyway, going back to the origin of baby eating myths, right? So we have the Cronus myth, right? We have what you have identified in Nordic mythology, Rune, with King Aun, and we of course also have the biblical myth of sacrificing children to the god Baal, right? That is a reference that we know from the so-called Holy Land, and that one of course circulates still with Christianity. That is really important to keep in mind, that Christianity as a belief system props up that story about pagans that are sacrificing children. And we have seen throughout the history of Christianity this idea and panic reoccurring over and over again. And we saw it, for instance, with the witch panic in Europe that then also spills over to North America in the 1600s. It starts in the late 1400s and then goes upwards in popularity and psychosis, I guess, in Europe in the 15 and 1600s, culminates in the 1600s. And what is one of the main things that is being propagated in the mythology around witches, right? It is this antithetical, like to the society that we've established, antithetical cult, where we have a bunch of naked women who are worshiping this goat-headed man, and they're having promiscuous sex with him and with everybody else and each other and I don't know what, and they're also eating babies. That's a staple of this as well. You know the Hansel and Gretel story didn't come out of nowhere, right? In Germany. So these stories are literally with us all the time. It's
an old pattern. It's an old pattern for oligarchs holding on to power. There are always useful idiots who are disaffected and disconnected from real story that you can manipulate to do that. So if you're in Russia and Catherine the Great if Catherine the Great is trying to undo the feudal system, that's going to mess up your earnings pretty bad if you're an oligarch, then you grab the first printing press and you put out pamphlets that says, hey, Catherine the Great's fucking horses.
Yeah.
She's having sex with horses. Like, that's what happened, you know?
Yeah.
And you know what? You know what? The Jews have a plan. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they did at the time.
And
that's
exactly
been
also
happening for
how
a
the
long
Dracula
time,
myth
and it
was
always
created,
comes
right?
with new information technologies. And
Yeah.
oligarchs use it, and they always use useful idiots, veterans, people like this.
So-
and they get them with stories, Satanism, paganism, dark belief.
And,
Okay.
and so that's also
people
how
are talking about a new satanic panic in the US going on now, that there's a new kind of rise in kind of hysteric fear of occultism and satanic stuff going on.
Absolutely. And that, you know, we saw that in the late 70s and through the 80s. And yeah, we're seeing it again in some respect. Hopefully people are a little smarter this time. There are still people who remember the last satanic panic, so maybe we can like put a lid on it. But it is interesting and fascinating to see, because what is happening is that these old baby eating myths are coming back. And what are they, of course, also tied to? They're tied to the moral agenda on the religious rights to curb abortion as a right and practice among Americans, right? So in that sense, you know, this is how you get all of these stories about, you know, eating fetuses in the back rooms of Planned Parenthood's clinics and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it is all, you know, a bunch of really psychotic bullshit that has no basis in reality, of course.
Okay.
Can I try to just say what I think Nordic mythology or Nordic animism can sort of address with this thing? Because yeah, you mentioned this, Daniel, and I'm not sure I have a complete answer to it. But one thing that I think that animism, for instance, can do is that animism is a way of reading intention in, or it can, an aspect of it is it's a way of reading intention in what happens around us. Competent animist systems enable people to engage the world as filled with intention. It is as if we're not meeting an it, we are meeting and someone all the time. Now, when our capacity to, for instance, read the thunder and the sea and the coronavirus as a someone, when that capacity decreases, then it is as if we have an intuition that we want there to be a someone in there somehow. And then there is this flood of sort of dysfunctional mythologies, really, that are not really capable of that. It was Bill Gates who made up the coronavirus. When the smallpox virus came to West Africa in the 19th century, it was a huge human catastrophe. And even though it was literally brought there by people who looked very different and came on big ships that looked like UFOs, they didn't make up conspiracy theories. Maybe there was a bit of that too, who knows? But that wasn't the main point. They read intention in that stuff that happened, and a deity actually emerged that was the deity of smallpox, and they related directly with the deity through that. Now, this is an animist way of relating.
That's also what happened during the plague in Europe, right? The deity of the plague was the Holy Mother, you know.
And it happened with the coronavirus in India. People who are a little bit less thick-headed when it comes to perceiving the and engaging the animist world, they engage the coronavirus as a goddess, actually. So this is one thing that I think that the
and isn't it really interesting that these post-colonial systems, or whatever you want to call them, on the other hand, like the US and also places in Africa, were instead engaging the coronavirus from a racist perspective. So like Asians, for instance, been targeted in the US as responsible for the coronavirus. And you actually see in certain countries in Africa, there was a targeting of Europeans, white people, as responsible for for bringing the coronavirus. That's kind of fascinating, right? That you have such a very distinct and very on point for what type of societies that have been sort of generated post-colonialism reaction here.
There's this one image that I can't get out of my head, and that is this South African nurse who was standing on a television, and she was saying, I can't make her accent even. Tyson, you can probably make her accent. She was saying, yeah, we made the Omicron variant down here, so you can thank South Africa for curing all of you, because it was the free, it was like the free vaccination. It spread by itself, and people got a little bit ill, but not very seriously, and then it was pretty much over. She was just, yeah, we solved that problem.
He inoculated the rest.
She was right.
You are welcome.
Oh, that was me. I'm a rich bitch.
Isn't that a Diantwood song? I feel like it's
the Diantwood.
Definitely.
Yeah. They're in trouble for like torturing disabled kids at the moment.
Oh yeah, he's a naughty boy, I think. Okay.
Oh, he's a naughty boy. He's a rough lad.
He is.
It's a bit of fun.
You do good. You do all right with my accent.
It's my favorite. It's my favorite accent in the world. I like how instead of saying pear, you say
there's something
purr.
wrong with you. If my accent's your
have a
favorite,
good purr.
then I don't know what that says about you,
accent.
Tyson. All right, I have a question. So can we see a correlation as to why people who are interested, I guess, in these conspiracy theories and who were used as quote unquote like soldiers in this kind of thing tend to have an interest in Nordic mythology, in Vikings, in this kind of thing? Is it like doing like a reason why? It does seem to be very common amongst like,
we've been trying to avoid it.
Right,
trying to avoid it,
that
but
kind of thing.
we're trying to avoid it. But Hitler,
everything always.
But it goes a bit more for that. Okay, and it comes back to all of the weird new agey stuff, when people are having seances. And so you remember back in the day, like in Victoria, England, all that sort of thing, where everyone was a spirit medium, man, so way back, this is at the turn of the century, and it's when industrialization is really kicking, public education is really happening. There's a bit of a backlash, weirdly, in the aristocracy towards, and they're all reaching for something. They've lost something. They're hanging around in their mansions and they're wearing turbans and a fez, and they're unwrapping mummies. And anyway, Madame Blavatsky's there, and she's channeling spirits, and she's spirit writing, and she reckons, there's actually all these races. There's different races, and they're in like a great chain of being in a pyramid. And you know what the best race is? It's the Aryan race. The spirits have told me they're called Aryans. And, so off it went, this master race ideology, and it came out of all that spiritualism. And the idea, it's weird because they were also drawing from clues that went back as far as the ancient Greeks, who invented that myth of Hyperborea, of that splendid barbarian standing on the ice. Somewhere up north, there was a place that was always all ice and snow, but somehow not too cold. And so there's naked barbarian, perfect society, and perfect bodies. And they were the perfect sons of Cronus. So this is how it comes back to Cronus. Perfect sons of Cronus, from all kings are descended, etc., etc. It also came out of some of their weird studies, like anthropological studies of the Scythians back at the same time, who are, I think that's in Russia, Scythia, and Ukraine, Celtic tribes that they came into contact with, because the Greeks had a few colonies, and colonia in Greek just meant home away from home back in those days, not like a fortress. Anyway, so they actually learned things from people, and they kind of put them on a pedestal, these tribes, like they were noble savages. You know what I mean? So a lot of that came down because you had a lot of these spirit mediums reading the old texts, and that influenced their construction of this idea of an Aryan civilization, some secret Atlantean civilization that existed previously, probably in Antarctica, in that cold, icy place, that special place. And then off it goes. So that's where all that myth came from. That's where all the mythology came from. That's how they started connecting it with Norse mythology, because you'll find in Northern America, they go, oh, you see all these burial mounds, all these mounds all over North America? That was Vikings, bros. That was Vikings there doing that. So they name their football teams Vikings. They say, oh, there were giants here before and they had red hair. That's because the Vikings were here, you know, and Vikings claimed America before the Native Americans did, you know, so it's kind of this weird way of, you know, white people being able to claim, you know, occupied lands. You know, that's
let me just make one.
Actually, the first people, etc., etc. There's a lot of weird mythology and weird longings for some kind of mythology that's going to legitimize the idea of this Nordic European as the pinnacle of human evolution. And they're looking for that story and they want that story. And unfortunately, Hitler ruined it. So people can't say Aryan anymore. So instead they say Indo-European. It's still the basis of all our disciplines, all of this bullshit. And that's why it's there so strong. And that's why people feel supported to do it, because it's through everything like chewing gum in your fucking hair.
Yep.
Go Rune.
And by the way, this brings us back to that nut job, the QAnon shaman, right? Because what is it that he's mixing in his visual expression? He is mixing some kind of like bizarre fake version of Native American headdress and then Viking stuff,
Buffalo.
right? Yes.
Yeah.
And this is actually quite fascinating, because what we also see, going back to Hitler, is that the Nazis in Nazi era Germany actually were quite interested in Native Americans. And the reason that they were quite interested in Native Americans was, one, in some ways it reflected their fears, right? Their fear was that, again, going back to the white replacement theory, that these white Aryan descendants in Germany were going to be replaced by other peoples. All of this actually really has its origin in Austria with Guido von List and the German movements in Austria, because Austria is a very multicultural kingdom in the late 19th century. We have it is not a German majority, but it's the largest ethnic group is German. And then you have Polish and Czech and Hungarians and Slovakians, Slovenians, Jews and Ukrainians even. And these Germans are trying to Germanify everything. And we get especially the esoterist Guido von List, who calls himself Fun. He didn't originally actually have that aristocratic title, but that's something that he takes at one point. And he is the one who mixes runes into all of this and believes that you can use rune magic essentially to also expel all of these non-Germans from the territories and all that stuff. Like it's actually quite bizarre. But anyway, going back to this this idea of the Aryans, what we also see is that in Nazi theories, some Native Americans are actually then considered honorary Aryans because they, according to Nazis,
you can't make this shit up.
You can't make this shit up. It's so bizarre. But according to them, they have.
Well, Aryans come from India, and India is named after Native Americans.
Weird. They started on the North Pole, right? And then so they spread downwards, right? So that means that they came to like Norway first, but they also came to like, North America and Japan, right? This is why we can work with the Japanese when we're Nazis, right? It makes perfect sense, right? They're also honorary Nazis and honorary Aryans, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So that's how all of this like ties together in these weird fantasies that these people had, right? And the real historical reality of all of this is massive genocide, right? And that's the real problem that we're facing with these fucked up fantasies, right? That they actually materialize in such things as genocide. And that's why we need to have proper analysis and proper response to that analysis, right?
let me also just make a point with all this, and that is that one thing is that there is an actual interface between esotericism, and esotericism has been a lot of different things going back through European history. I actually think that esotericism is also a reservoir of rejected knowledge forms in
It definitely
European
is.
space.
Definitely.
And it's not in its entirety. It's not just what produces Nazism. Nazism comes out of that, or proto-Nazism and von List and Jörg Lanz and all these Blavatsky and all these people. But there's also a thing about that Euro-traditional ways of knowing have a tendency. One thing is that they're actually being kind of leached into these things, but another thing is that I also think that the association is being amplified. If you look at the Qanon shaman, it's a super good example. What kind of movement was he a part of there? I think it was an evangelist revival movement, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah.
So the image that we are all being shown, from Alaska to Melbourne, of an evangelist revival movement is a person with Nordic heathen tattoos on him and some imitated Native American headgear.
Yeah.
This
is the preferred way of representing it, right?
Yes, the media chooses this easy image, exotifying image, to uphold a easily recognizable other, and that maintains. And I think that this straight association also serves to keep Euro descendants in a space where they cannot actually access traditional knowledge.
Yep.
Germany is another example. The Thule Society, Jörg Lanz, proto-Nazi speculation, and Guido von List, Rune Yoga, and all that stuff. Yeah, that was a thing. Heinrich Himmler was doing some LARPing in his castle there, and they liked some pagan stuff. But how implicated was Nazi Germany with the Protestant Church? With the Catholic Church?
Yes.
Very implicated. Probably on levels that reaches all the way from Hitler as a messianic figure, ideas of salvation in relation to the Aryan race, all the way down to institutional stuff that's going on. However, the association with Norse or Nordic paganist imagery in Germany is so powerful that it's almost, they have very, very strong rejection of this stuff in Germany. I think you can almost be illegal to have runes on your t-shirt and stuff like that. I don't know the details of it. I just heard that it's rather extreme. Meanwhile,
it's weird.
Christianity in Germany is absolutely untouched. In fact, the leading conservative party is called the Christlich Deutsche Union. So that means that the association of this Nordic stuff, one thing that is part of it is real, and it's really important to criticize the fuck out of it. But another thing is that it's also important to be aware of the ways in which it's amplified in order to enforce existing.
You're totally right. And I want to point out something that I actually criticized in a research article not so long ago. A fellow scholar of mine characterized the alt-right, the American alt-right, as this cacophony of far-right ideas and pagan ideas. And I'm like, these people are mostly Catholic and Lutheran and evangelicals. like why are we throwing pagan into the characterization of this like amorphous blob that's called the alt-right?
Because of the people from the left who have come into it as well, and they've come in via yoga and the wellness spirituality movements. So because they all come from they all have the same lineage. They all come down from Madame Blavatsky. And the yoga side is like, it was the stuff that they stole from India, who were also Aryans originally, apparently, in this story. So that was the stuff they stole from India, and then when India decolonized, recycled it back through. And had all these gurus who were in a weird feedback loop with England, creating these weird mythologies around Hindu fascism, Hindu nationalism.
and missions
so this
to the West in
recycled
general.
weird stuff back through so that the Hindu fascists were doing the same things as everybody else. And this is how you end up with, I mean, it's very weird, but you can see fascism is all one thing. And what fascism hates is what, weirdly, Nordic spirituality and culture is really being about, which is protecting the commons. You know, your culture has always been about protecting the commons, that every man's right is to those common lands, common resources, forests, oceans, fishing, that you all have access to that and you can camp where you fucking want. You know what I mean? That's always been protected. Now, the Catholicism has tried to paint it the other way as the devil, you know, and the raven is the devil and all that sort of thing, to actually punish and burn that out of Nordic mythology.
Right?
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah, the commons of the swear. So what was important, particularly in Britain, was to the enclosure of the commons. Now, the enclosure of the commons was how the commons were co-opted, through British mercantile capitalism and via the Catholic Church and the Protestant Church later. They managed to, do the enclosures of the commons to make sure the peasantry, the Volk, did not have access to those, and that these were in the controlling hands of oligarchs and like corporate people. And, towards this idea of the corporate side taking over the state, that state power, that the power of the people, power of the land, commons, everything else, and the freedom of people on the land, that this is diminished and it's held by oligarchs. And that's supported by the state, and it's supported by business, everything else. So it's always been about that power play. Now, what's weird then is that they've taken your culture that victimized, and now that they've completely destroyed it, they're sanitizing it and presenting it. They're representing it back to the people as this symbol of liberty. And they're saying, look how much you're suffering. That's not because of us oligarchs taking all your commons away. It's because of the Jews. They want to replace you. But you know what? You have a glorious past. You're Vikings. You have mystical runes. You've got this amazing, beautiful past and this spirituality. Take it up. Take up arms, my brothers. Hold the line. Hold the line. Even though this brother's never seen a shield wall in his life and wouldn't have survived 5 minutes. Hold the
Tyson,
line.
I fucking love
shield
you.
wall, my hall.
Anyway, I love you.
This is
you are welcome
anyway,
back
fuck
here
these people.
we will stay up late to do a show with you anytime.
Anyway, so they've taken your culture and they've turned it into something that it's not, and they've fed it back to people. They've fed it back to people and vulnerable people, and they've used them. They've used them, and now they're putting on fucking buffalo horns.
No,
you know what I mean? And that's what fascism is.
Less about the buffalo horns.
Uses damaged people to support corporate power, oligarchs, and it's evil as hell. And I tell you, some people, for people to hear that, I reckon we could de-pill people real quick. If they heard Mathias, Rune, Dan, if they can hear you.
You just have to check my name.
Get point across.
Hey, Tyson, you just have to check my name then.
Yeah, because I nearly called you Silent Bob.
Shan, fucking you edit that so that gets a little bit closer, so it doesn't sound like he was looking up my name there. Just fucking edit that in and make it
Tyson, I want to add something to what you said there, which is really actually important in the perspective of the history of pre-Christian religion in Northern Europe and what is called heathenry or heathenism today. The origin of the word heathen, right? So we may recognize the word heath in it, which is in later etymology understood at this like outside space, just as the word paganus originally meant something like hillbilly or something like that, because it was considered these people outside of the urban spaces who still held on to that original pagan belief. Now,
like saying the bush almost. in the bush.
Yeah. So it's something like the bush or something like that. But the
we
original
can send
meaning-
a link to some yarns, me and Rune, with our friend Michel Gruber, who he what he knows about the ecosystems of the heath, and the human ecological niche in there as a manager of those resources when it was part of the commons. I tell you, the stuff that he knows will blow your mind.
That's so fascinating.
In terms of the natural knowledge side. Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, so the original core meaning of the word heath that goes into haven in the early Germanic languages is actually commons. These are the fields, the common fields that a village or society are able to use under certain terms. And so somebody who is a heathen is actually somebody who adheres to the rules of the common. That is a person who actually upholds the laws and bonds of society, right? So what actually happens in terms of the semantics of the word as it's being tossed around in early Christian Europe is that it goes from being somebody who upholds the structures of a functional society to somebody who is outside of society. And that tells you just everything about the way that those powers that existed at the time have related to it. And it tells you everything about the way that word has then been transposed upon indigenous peoples around the globe once the Europeans start moving around, right? In the late 14 and early 1500s. I want to highlight something here that is important to consider too. Vine Deloria, in his book God is Red, writes that I think he casts it as the conservative American. He talks about people who I think today are considered white nationalists. Obviously, this book is written long before this discussion became more prominent. He talks about white nationalists, he talks about conservatives, nationalists, and so on. And he says they figured something out. Right? He says they figured out that land connectedness is important, but what they have then missed, right, are all the human aspects of this. That they are focused on this colonial territorialism, for instance, and that is part of the problem then, right? And I think we're seeing a lot of this with many of these people out there who are discontent with the modern world. They obviously recognize that living in a society like the US, for instance, or the UK, and many European societies, Australia for that matter, is problematic. Because what are these societies in essence? I have personally, this is actually kind of funny that there's a link between the Aun myth and the Cronus myth, because I've cast these types of societies as Cronus societies. They're societies that are eating their own, right? And, just look at the American Senate. Like, these are ancient people, most of them, who are just holding on to power and trying to prevent the younger generation from entering. What isn't Cronus about that, right? And so I think the diagnostic here is that a lot of people are realizing that there's something wrong and we need to do something, and they're desperately trying to fit that into some type of logic, right? And that's why you get crazies like the QAnon shaman, because he's sitting there and he's trying to work it out, but he's not given any proper tools to work it out. And so that's how he ends up being the poster boy of this attempted revolution of idiots that showed up at the American Capitol. He's got no uncles, exactly. Yeah. And so that is actually
his
real
uncles are Roger Stone,
tragedy.
Alex Jones.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
His uncles, Alex Jones, Roger Stone.
And they do not care
Carlson.
about him one bit, right? They can only they care about him to the extent that they can use him as cannon fodder, right? And that's a real human tragedy out there, right? I think this is also important to point out that so many of these people who end up being radicalized in different ways become radicalized because they're searching for some meaning in their existence and they have no proper guidance, right?
And often they probably have aspects of right diagnosis, but just aspects, and these bits and pieces are being kind of jumbled together in ways where the whole thing becomes toxic. Like we were talking about, Tyson, the Qanon movement has in many ways been like this very anti-totalitarian really movement, but just ended up being completely in the service of this sort of weirdly buffoonocratic Trump system and all that stuff, you know.
Bureaucratic. I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, it's satisfying. It's satisfying. There's nothing satisfying about the spirituality that Rune has, the spirituality that I have, that you have. It doesn't promise you any power, and it's no fun. All it does is places limits on you.
Yeah.
You know, I want to go.
It's just
I want to
uphill.
go to the volcanoes.
Yeah.
I want to go to the volcanoes and see the freaking elves. You know, I don't get to do that, you know, because of my spirituality keeps me in my place. And I haven't done the work yet to be able to like even get close to being able to do that stuff. You know, all it does is places limits on, you know, these guys, the Q shaman, Q in general, it's just offering everybody unlimited power. You know, this true libertarian promise of, wow, you know, a very small government, but at the same time, a government that's pretty fucking big because it protects all of my property and, you know, forces everybody else to adhere to all the laws that I like. I just want to make sure that every woman on this continent and beyond has no control over her body. Then I can truly be free. You know, that kind of thinking, you know, that's where it projects itself onto policy in that way. But these guys think they can walk through walls. They think they're going to be able to levitate. They think they're going to be able to go to other planets. You know, they want the big magic and they want the big power that comes from that. And, you know, they get promised that. So what do we have to offer them, Rune? What do we have to offer them? They're not going to be satisfied with what which is nothing. It's limiting. All magic does is limit us in our world because we actually have the real magic, which you can't do very much with.
Because binding,
you know,
is limiting.
Yeah, it's nature. Binding. Yeah. It's binding.
Connecting.
The more power you get,
this is so fascinating.
The less agency you have. The more power you get, the less agency you have. You know, it's toxic. And so these guys have, I guess, heaps of agency.
It's so fascinating, right? Because one of the most overlooked descriptions of the Nordic gods is that they're called the bonds and those who bind. Like it's everywhere in the sources, right? And that's what they do. And that's
so
not
look
at
our earliest conversations. Our earliest conversations is Rune accusing me of spreading Aboriginal disinformation about animism. He's going, no, you know, the Midgard serpent is not the second law of thermodynamics. You're full of shit, kind of thing. And that's how we bonded. We bonded like that.
Let's wrap this up. Got a couple of questions before we go. I think we've got one for you, Tyson, one for Rune. Before we get there, I think it's safe to say, I think I was going to mention this earlier about conspiracy theories. I think they survive so well because once in a while you get one that comes along that turns out to be real, and people, you know, it's true, and people then believe in it and point back to that one. I mean, Alex Jones has been living on Bohemian Grove his whole career. You know, he had this one thing that turned out to be kind of true, and he's made a career on it. And I think that happens time and time again with conspiracy theories, that once in a while one's accurate, so then everybody who believes in them points back to that one. So yeah, I think everyone, you know, you just be careful of what you believe in, do your own research, be your own person, and kind of take the time to read and yeah, do your own thing. Don't rely on other people and other sources, I guess.
Such a wonderful dad statement right there. Thank you.
I got you.
Podcast
I'm
dad.
trying to get good at this wrapping up thing. So Tyson, Alex asked this earlier, and I wanted to go back to it. So she said, would you say that the spirit, quote unquote, in these theories could be synonymous with confidence? So basically, if you are confident enough, you can bullshit anything, for instance.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. Like I said, that gets you plenty of agency, but that gives you nothing on the side of spirit. You have nothing. You can't fake it till you make it.
Okay.
With spirit, you can
Okay.
do that with people, and you can grift, you can trick, you can get plenty of people into your Patreon that way. But you're full of shit, and that won't last. You're not really doing it, and you're getting further away.
I felt like you were speaking directly to me then when you said that.
No.
Who, Tyson?
I'm just looking right into the camera, and I'm speaking to these fucking grifters. And I know because I'm one of them. Here, man. I'm telling you, you read that last book that I wrote. There's guru shit in there. I'm messing with your head. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I'm doing guru tricks there. Like, ooh, I'm all mysterious. Like, listen to me. I don't know. Just know your place. Be in your place. Be there. Learn your stuff and be really, really satisfied with the basics and learn them well. And you know what I mean? Your power will increase, but know that as your power increases, your agency will decrease. Mm-hmm. The more you learn in spirit, the more you hold in spirit, the less agency you have to use it in the world. You are bound more and more. You're the genie in the bottle. So, just enjoy what you have.
As I wrote on Instagram not so long ago, there's a reason I haven't written a book on ritual, because that's not something that I can tell you how to do.
Mm-hmm. Look, if somebody claims to be magic and they're doing things where you're going, oh my God, that person is magic, and they seem to have heaps of agency and could do what they want with it, they're full of shit. That's how you know a group.
Okay. Yeah. So Rune, one for you. Greg asked, don't you think as heathens we would be better off staying away from political labels and instead trying to keep our heathenry grounded in animism?
No, I don't think so. And the reason is that the political labels are such an unconditional or such an ubiquitous condition that anybody addressing a Euro-traditional culture is working on. That means that and particularly when you have to do with Nordic heritage, it is so extremely politicized already. It's a little bit like, there are these people who deny that the Holocaust took place, right? So if you say, well, I'm neither for nor against if the Holocaust took place, you're actually taking a very radical standpoint there, right? Because you're saying you're not sure if it took place. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Or when what was the name? Rosa Parks, who the American activist who defied the apartheid legislation and sat in front of the bus where black people were only sitting behind the bus. Today, we would agree that she's a hero. But what if you said, no, I'm neither for nor against her doing that? It is the same, I think, with Nordic tradition, because it's so intensely politicized, and therefore, perhaps unfortunately, I don't think there is a space to really step away from being political about this stuff.
The problem is also we're talking about political labels, right? So people would like to cast this, if you're on the left, then you're doing things that you want to do, Rune. But if you're on the right, then you're being fascist about everything, right? But I mean, these terms like left and right, they seem to have lost so much meaning nowadays. Because there was
a circle where they meet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's in those, and it's in those seances that I told you about, and that's the secret. That's the unification between East and West, between India and Britain, between, you know, woo woo and rah rah. It's all the same thing. They all come from the same place. Those ones. That's why you got Gwyneth Paltrow, who's a pilled weird wellness guru, who's basically should be standing up there beside the. I mean, you know, the Q shaman, etc. I mean, it's all the same thing. It's one thing. It's yeah, just keep your eyes open. You know, step back a little bit. Keep away from the bullshit. You know, you'll be right.
Yeah,
I
agree.
Let's wrap this up.
And all those people I was talking about, they're all working at the Tesla factory now. Hey, I just want to drop Elon's stocks a little more. I just want to kick him while he's down.
Not
racist
gonna argue with
Tesla
that,
factory. Oh, they got segregation there. Apartheid at the Tesla factory. Tell everyone.
All right, let's wrap this up. Rune, you're welcome back anytime. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much for this. Let people know where they can find you, listen, watch your videos.
Look for
Like your
Nordic
Instagram.
Animism, particularly on YouTube. But I'm also on a couple of other platforms online. Just look for Nordic Animism.
Perfect. Tyson, thank you very much. You are welcome back as well. Please come back and join us again. This is a lot of fun. Yeah.
Rune's the only person I trust for that good Nordic animist shit. They're really good, that sticky icky one.
Thanks, brother.
Well, it hasn't been cut with any fascism. No, it hasn't been cut with any fascism. It's the pure business. Yeah.
Like,
perfect.
Man, whenever you say stuff, I'm so flattered. Thanks,
bro,
you're
man.
That's great. He said I'm not a fascist. Hey,
well, that's
nice.
actually
it's the highest compliment.
It is. I'm being a fascist.
You are not Hitler. I love it.
Right, next level, we're gonna have to have you trust me as well with that kind of stuff. Then
I trust you already. Good face.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Now you got that good face that you're right there beside me in the shield wall. I trust you, my brother.
Absolutely.
You and Mads Mikkelsen. You fucking right there. Rah, hold the line. Hold the line, my brothers.
All right, I feel left out, Tyson. Give me some. Say something nice about me, man.
Yeah.
I forgot my name.
That's it.
Give me something nice here. Fucking hell.
All right. Dan, the proper warlock man on the axe there, son. I just didn't want to assume that you had legs. You know, you're there. Look, hey, I've the boneless had no legs too. So you know, if you're unable to walk, I still want you in my shield wall, bros.
I'll be there.
But we actually do it in our culture. Yeah, look, where's my shield gone? We do it in single file. So it's one fella at the front. We're not like facing them in a big wall. Our shield wall is there. We're a long line. People standing behind me. So you've only got one fella to try and hit. And you're throwing your axe at me, bros. And I'm stepping aside and 20 fellas are stepping at the same time. Boom. You missed a lot of us. Yeah. That's why I got this little shield here. You could try hit me with that shield. I got smash that shield aside. And then I got my big, see this boomerang here? He doesn't come back. I didn't make it to come back because when I hit you with this one, it's going to stick with you. It's going to stick right there. You're dead, Dan. All right. Do you feel?
I feel like you've gone from trying to compliment me to threatening me. So I don't know where we're going with this now.
I'm just trying to get you ghoulie up, bro. Just trying to get you ghoulie up. Get you ready for the shield wall. It's because I'm trying to I'm insulting you like a Viking drill sergeant. Because I want you ghoulie up. I want you ready in the shield wall. Me, Mathias, Rune, Mads Mikkelsen, we're going to make this Aun happen.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Where can people find your books? Where can people follow you online, Instagram, Facebook,
Right
wherever?
there beside you in the shield wall, bros. They just got to look beside you there in the shield wall. Hold the line.
Okay.
That's it.
Right.
I don't want people to read my stuff. Go away. And don't stop bothering me. I'm busy.
Mathias, all right, where can people find you?
Well, you can find my website, mathiasnordvik.com. And you can also, if you really must, follow me on Instagram. Mathias Nordvik is the name. You can find it on Instagram. That's really that. I don't do Facebook.
No, you do not.
Because I try to stay out QAnon rabbit holes and that kind of stuff.
Yes. All right. If you enjoy the podcast, please take a minute to leave us a 5-star rating, positive review. Helps us keep growing. Wherever you listen to podcasts, it really does help us out, and I enjoy reading them. If you can, please support us on Patreon. It's the price of buying me or Mathias a cup of coffee every month. We're going to do some restructuring on there and bring some new educational material, I think, as well. We were talking about that earlier in the week. But at the minute, you get a bonus episode. There's a back catalogue on there. It's a lot of fun. Like I say, it helps us keep growing, keep getting bigger and moving forward. And follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all the usual places, just at Nordic Mythology Podcast. There we go. This is a lot of fun. Tyson, thank you very much. Rune, thank you. We managed to work this out with the times. It was good.
This is great.
Yep.
Thank you
get
very
in touch
much.
anytime, brother. And if anyone could get me in a room with Mads Mikkelsen, let me know.
We'll do our best.
Try.
We'll do our best.
All right.
Cool.
Bye, everyone.
All right.